Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So we continue to discuss about the light Buddha. So last time we discussed about when the Buddha left the monastery due to the dispute or conflict of two groups of monks. So even he tried to resolve, but he could not because they didn't listen to him. So he left the monastery and went to the forest. So at first he met a monk who lived in the forest by himself, do meditations, and he really enjoyed that type of seclusion. And after that, he moved on to meet a group of monks, including 3 months, and member Anuruddhas was one of them. So when the Buddha asked how did they do, how they live together, so they replied that they live together in harmonies, they share the food together, they share the meditative experience, they work together, and so forth. So the Buddha praised them, and after that, he gave the teachings of what we call 6 types of harmonies. And we discussed last time some of them. So let me review one more time about those 6 types of harmonies. So the first harmonies is that they live together at one place peacefully. So that means they are happy to share the same centers, the same place, or the same land or forest together without any kind of dispute or argument. And again, this type of 6 principle of harmonies can be applicable in any communities, any groups of people, any families, and so forth. For example, if we live together on the same roof, like a husband and wife, parents and children, and siblings, we share things together, like the restroom, and the kitchen, and so forth. In order to live peacefully, we need to share and respect each other, because everyone is different in their personality, in their ways of thinking, in the way of eating, walking, and so forth. But to maintain the harmonies, when we live together, we need to be tolerant, we need to be patient, we need to share with each other things that we have. Otherwise, we may fight for using the restroom, for using the kitchen, for using the tables, chair, and so forth. So that's why the first ever things that Buddha taught us that the first principle of harmony is that when we live together peacefully, we need to share. And the second one is that when we have the benefits, we need to share. Whether it's in the families, in the communities, in the communities, in society. For example, let's say in the companies, if the managers or owners just give some benefits, a bonus for some people without any kind of explanations. So it raise some kind of jealousy, raise some kind of disharmony when they work together. Of course, if their employees meet with the company's expectations or guidelines or deadlines, and certain employees could get the their bonus based on their performance that have been set up uh, before. So definitely, if someone meet the deadline, if someone could perform the work uh, successfully, they would get that type of bonus. Uh, Equally, otherwise, if the owners and the manager uh, of that company just give the gifts, bonus without any kind of guidelines, without any kind of fair approach, it would create some types of disharmonies, conflict, and even the parents when they buy something for their children, whether they young or old, male, female, boy or girls, they need to give the gifts or the food, the toys, and so forth equally to their children. Otherwise, there's some kind of fighting. So that's why for the monks to live together, if they receive the food offerings from the lay people, if they have any kind of donation, they need to share together. So that's why in Buddhist tradition, especially in the monastic communities, when the lay people make offerings to one monk, uh, that monk is whether he is the head monk, the senior or the junior, they need to share without people, without the monks. Otherwise, it's doing this harmony too. Otherwise, they may think, oh, the lay people get favor one month is the others. So that's why the Buddha established this type of rules that they have to share together equally the benefits. And the first is the common precept that they need to practice. That's the first principle of harmony. Like I just mentioned that for the monks, in order to live together, they keep the same precept. Otherwise, if one monk follow the precepts of not eating in the evening, but other monk doesn't follow that, that the disharmonies. It's like in our communities, um, everyone follow uh, the, the rules and regulations when we drive the cars. When we see the red light at the traffic light, we need to stop. Uh, Otherwise, we may encounter accident. If someone say, "Oh, I have the privilege to pass through this type of red light," again, uh, everyone need to follow the same rules of stopping this stop sign at the stop sign at the red light, and even when we obtain the permit for building the house, we still follow the same, a similar regulation as were established by the county, city, and the state. So this is applicable in any circumstances. And the point is that when we discuss with each other, we need to restrain ourselves from uh, uh, verbal fighting, verbal argument, verbal violence. That's when we discuss together with some topics, we need to use our nice, pleasant word to express ourselves instead of yell each other, instead of dominating other people before they open their mouth to speak. And so uh, that is the way we can bring the harmonies when we have any kind of conversation. And it's applicable in any kind of relationship, especially for the spouse, the husband and the wife. If we want to keep the harmonies in the family, if the wife express herself in some ways, the husband need to listen, not to interrupt, not to obstruct or suppress what the wife try to explain, and vice versa. When it's time for the husband to talk, the wife needs to listen. And when they talk, they need to talk in the nice way, in the pleasant word, in the polite way, in the gentle way. Uh, Otherwise, if they have harsh speech, if they yell at each other, scold each other, and there's no way for other parties to remain calm, to listen to those mm, mm, verbal expression or verbal abuse. So that's why it's so important. It's applicable in any circumstances. So that's why the Buddha remind the monks when they have any kind of conversation, they need to have this type of pleasant, gentle, respect, uh, and compassionate speech toward each other, and so that they can keep the harmonies spirit within their groups. And the next one, number 5, is uh, if they have the knowledge, they need to share together. If they attend some type of meditative experience, they need to share in the harmless way. They're not supposed to hide, they're not supposed to fight. Uh, so when they view something, when they see something different, they need to find ways to resolve. Um, for example, let's say two students, or 3 or 4 students come together to do the group project. Of course, every one of them have different views about the project, how to do, how to execute the project, and so forth. But of course, the common goal is to finish up the project. That's why even they have different views about, let's say, to draw a house model, for example. There's many different approaches to draw, but the common goal is to draw a nice house. Uh, so that's the common goal. So everyone can contribute different views, how to draw this room, this door, that door, but they need to have compromise together so that they can work together. Otherwise, if they fight each other, oh, this is my way of drawing, this your way of drawing is wrong, my way is right. There's no way for them to sit together to draw that um, house. So that's why having the similar viewpoints is so important in our life, in our circumstances. And this last one is um, if we have any thinking, any thoughts uh, that may be different from others, if we work together, we need to share, we need to discuss, we need to find ways to compromise each other. We need to find ways to resolve the problems uh, so that everyone can accept, everyone can agree upon each other for the project, for doing the project, for doing certain things together. So if they get attached to their thinking, to their views, there's no way for them to work together in any kind of circumstances. And then we have situations, especially in certain type of relationship like this husband and wife. If the husband sees things in different ways, then the wives they need to sit down and talk together to come up to a common sense, a common solutions. For example, let's say a couple has a son that they want to send to the school, they want to educate their son. Of course, the common goal is to educate their son. But if they fight each other, or the husband want to send the son to the public school, but the wife want to send the son to the public school, or the wife want to discipline the son in some way, but the husband would not agree to discipline the son and so forth. That's create a conflict. So that's why they need to sit down and find a common route, find the common solution, how to raise and educate their own son. So it's applicable in any circumstances, um, especially for this type of principle. So again, let me review one more time. The first principle of harmony is that when they live together physically, they need to share things that they have at that place, at that house, that communities. The second one is that when they have benefits or profits, actually for the monk case, if they receive the donations and the support from lay people, then to share. And the third is that they keep the same precept as the monk. Like we follow the same regulations, rules, law when we drive cars. And the fourth is that when they talk, they need to use the harmonious speech, the pleasant, respect, and passionate speech to communicate with each other. To stay away from verbal fighting, verbal disagreement, and so forth. That's number four. And number five is that they need to share the similar point views, similar goals, so that they can work together. And the last one is that they need to be harmonious in their thinking. If they have any conflicts in thinking, they need to resolve and find the common ground to come up with something that could compromise their views together. So that is the 6 ways of living in harmonies that taught Buddhist monk. So after listening to the Buddha explanation of this principle of harmonies, Venerable Buddha and other two monks, they were so happy to follow the teachings of this harmonious principle. So after that, the Buddha left them and he walked to the Rakita forest, and he decided to spend the rainy season by himself in that forest. So probably this is the first ever rainy season that Buddha spent time by himself in the forest without attendance, without group of monks, without the support of the lay people. So of course, it happened when he attained enlightenment. He spent 7 weeks underneath of the Buddha trees without any kind of support, companionship with other people. So for him, it's so easy to spend his time by himself. So that's why he feels at ease and peaceful when he stays by himself in that forest. So of course, when he thought about the fighting of the monks in the Kosambi era, they suffer because of those type of argument of violence. And of course, it's affect to the lay communities too. But he tried his best to bring harmonies to resolve the discord, conflict, but they didn't listen to him. So that's why he walked away to find his own place to meditate. And in that forest, they will all have animals, and somehow, according to the records, they say that there's many elephants, monkeys came to support the Buddha. That's why the Buddha could learn how to call, imitate the sound of an elephant pins. And when the elephants brought the food, they pick the food and bring the water to the Buddhas. And for the monkeys, they brought the holy coins to offer to Buddhas. So let me share with you an image that demonstrates how elephants make offerings to Buddha. It's here. Here, that's illustration of an elephant that brought the food and the water to the Buddhas. Let me play a short video clips that mention about how the Buddha stay alone in the forest, and how king of monkeys and elephants make offerings to Buddha during that rainy season. Background is monks on the jar. That's why the lamp come to this forest.
up where I can see you right now.
Otherwise, you'll do what?
Who are you? What are you doing here?
I should be the one asking you the same question. I am the Lord of Monkeys, and I have been living in Rakitana Forest for a long time. And you, what are you doing here?
I am Palinayaka, the Lord of the Elephants. I got fed up with all the busyness and problems of my entourage and left to spend some time alone.
Yes, your entourage sounds just every bit as irritating as mine. You say you are the Lord of the Elephants, but then why are you walking around spying on humans?
This one is not like other human beings. He bears the marks of a great man. From the moment I saw his bearing and the graceful, peaceful way he moved, I felt full of faith and inspiration.
Well, if that's the case, let's go and ask him some questions.
Did you know that the Lord Buddha has left the Kositarama monastery? Well, he has probably gone to give teachings in another city. Not at all. I have heard that one of the senior monk experts in the monastic discipline has had a falling out with the senior monk expert in Dhamma teaching over some small matter of the discipline. Not only that, but students of the two senior monks have sided with the teachers so that the quarrel has spread, and now there is a major conflict. It got so bad that even when Lord Buddha himself admonished the monks and urged them to give up their conflict, they wouldn't listen. And so he left the monastery alone. That's terrible. Those monks are really stubborn and intractable. How long will it be before we will be able to hear the teachings from the Lord Buddha again? That's the point. The monks' dispute means that all the rest of us aren't able to listen to the Lord Buddha teach. The Lord Buddha must be fed up with the disobedient monks. From now on, we shouldn't make any more food offerings to them. Oh, good idea. Let's encourage all the other lay supporters to do the same.
So anyway, so that's the destination of how Buddha left the monastery, and the lay people make the decision that they would not see the, not offer anything to the monks. So let me have this one here. Okay, here are the images that illustrate how the elephants and the monkeys came to support the Buddha. The elephants brought the waters and the food, and the monkeys brought the honeycombs to the Buddhas. So these are the image of those animals that illustrate how they make offerings to the Buddhas. Okay, and that is this one here, and this is here. Anyway, so there's some temple that have this type of image of the statue of the Buddhas together with the elephants and the monkeys that offer the service and food to the Buddhas there. This one here, you can see this. Anyway, so let's say that there's another temple here that illustrate how the monkeys make offerings and the holy come to the Buddhas, and the elephants offer the food and the water to the Buddha. So during this 3 months raining season, the Buddha stayed in that forest, and he received the offerings of these two animals, and later on, uh, when the Buddha finished that rainy season, and he walked out of the forest uh, to go back to the monastery. Um, these two animals so sad. But according to the record, they say that for the monkeys, when he got the honeycomb to make offerings to Buddha, at first the Buddha didn't accept that because there's no peace with that honeycombs. So the monkeys knew that the reason why Buddha didn't take that. So he just took out all the eggs and the bees, and the rest he offered to the Buddha. That means he's offered to the Buddha the honeys for the Buddha to consume, because that monkey was so happy when the Buddha accepted his offerings. So he jumped up and down somehow, according to the record. They say that he fell down to the ground and died. After he died, he passed away and be reborn into the 33, the heaven of 33s, to become one of that heavenly beings up there. And after the 3 months of raining season, the Buddha left the forest. Of course, for the elephants, it could not bear the separation with the Buddhas. But the Buddha said that you need to stay in this forest because you cannot go to live with the human communities. It will be dangerous for you. So the Buddha explained to the elephants. Of course, he knew that, but he could not endure the departure of the Buddhas. So he missed the Buddha so much that somehow he fell down and broke his foot to pass away. So after that, according to the records, it was born in that same heaven, the heaven of 33s, to become one of the heavenly beings. So that the famous story that relate to these two animals that support the Buddha during the Buddha staying alone in that forest. So after that, after the Buddha left that forest, he walked back to the monastery, and of course, eventually he got to the monastery in Savatthi, Chetavana Monastery. Let me share with you the map where the Buddha walked to. One is I want to share with you that the animals, they have good thought too. They have good nature too, as long as we train them properly. So I want to share with you a short video clips about how people in Thailand like to train elephants to make offerings to Buddhist monk. Yeah. Here in the Theravada traditions, every morning monks go out to beg for food. That's why it become a tradition for Thai people, uh, the Sri Lanka people, Cambodian, Laotian, and so forth to make offerings to the monks early in the morning. So after they receive the food, they would bring back in the monastery and share together. So here you can see that people train these elephants to make offerings to the monks, and after that, the monk uh, decide the Buddha teachings as a lesson for them and the Buddhist people in the town, are the one who make offerings to him or to them. And after that, they left. So again, regardless of who they are, animals can be trained to develop their goodness, nature. Okay, so let me share with you the ancient map that indicate where the Buddha walk around in India, especially where he spent his reigning retreat. So here is Goswami, is Sabatis. So like we study that the monks in this era, Goswami era, they fought each other verbally. They didn't agree with each other. They created conflicts. That's why Buddha left them to go to the forest to do meditation by himself. And after that when retreat, he walked back to Savatthi, the monastery, the Chetapur monastery in Savatthi. So remember in the past, especially for the monks, the Buddhists, they walk by foot for a long distance in this region to teach other people. So according to the records, they say that eventually the Buddha walked back to the Chetapur monastery in Savatthi. So everyone was so happy to see the Buddha again. Of course, when the Buddha stayed alone in the forest, when the Buddha left the communities of monks to go to that forest to do meditations, no one could know where the Buddha stayed. Of course, in the past, it's quite different from now. We may have cell phone, have some form of communication to track other people down. In the past, there was no cell phone, no GPS, and so forth. So when the Buddha could not stop that two groups of monks in the Kosabi to live in harmony together, that's why he left them to go to the forest without their knowledge, that they didn't know where he heading to. And even some monks asked Venerable Ananda, the Buddha close candles to go out to find the Buddhas. But another, he mentioned that, well, if the Buddha left by himself, eventually he would come back by himself. So there's no need for us to fight him. It's just, the times for him to get back. That's why they stay back at the monastery. And so when the Buddha got back to the monastery and inquired about the monk in the Kusabi era. So Rembo Ananda said that after the Buddha departure, um, the situation got worse because there's no one to restrain them or give them the advice, or even they didn't listen to anyone too. So that's why the situation got worse, and they fought each other globally up to the point that they live in separate places. And of course, eventually the lay people knew what's happening, and like the beauty groups not to just watch. It's common sense for the lay people to make a question why the monks fought each other locally, why the monk did not listen to Buddha's teachings. And that's why they withdraw their support from those monks. And of course, eventually these two groups of monks recognized the mistake, and they came up to Rainbow Satiputra to ask for advice to fight the Buddhas, so that they could get the support from lay people again. So Rainbow Satiputra told them that it's better for you guys to resolve the conflict with each other first before we find the Buddhas to make request for his teachings, because you guys didn't listen to him at first. So eventually they have no choice that the monk who memorized the sutra, he went to see the precept monks, the one that point out the mistake, and the one that made us have a discord. So the sutra monks went to the precept monk and defend this mistake, and the precept monk in return also make the penance toward the teaching of sutra monk. So from that time onwards, both of them live together, and so these two groups. And that's why when Buddha went back to the monastery, when was Sariputra, they thought to Buddha what's happening, and he asked further that please give him the advice when these two monks came to seek the Buddha teaching again. And so the Buddha said, well, you know how to guide them. So later on, when these two groups of monks heard the news that the Buddha went back to the Chikro monastery, so they went to see him. So at first, Rainbow Ananda asked Buddha permission whether they are allowed to see Buddha or not. So the Buddha said, if they depend on their mistake, that's fine, and they can come to see me. So some lay people approached to the Buddhas and inquired whether they would keep up with the support for those two groups of monks, So Buddha say yes, we need to support them too. And he told Venerable Ananda to set up 2 homes, 2 different places for them to stay. And he encouraged the lay people to continue to support them. So at that time, when the leaders of these 2 groups, the Sutra monks and the Tisek monk came to see the Buddhas. So the Buddha admonished them, and of course he accepted their dependence. And so when everything is settled out, Venerable Sariputra asked Buddha if he could provide any kind of teachings to settle out any kind of dispute in the future. So later on, the Buddha asked Venerable Anuruddha to repeat again the 6th principle of harmonies that I just mentioned recently. The principle of first living in harmonies physically under the same place, the same house, the same monastery, and so forth. The second one is to share equally the benefit. And the third is to practice keep the same precept. And the third is that they supposed to stay away from global fighting. They're supposed to have gentle, compassionate, and understandable speech with each other. The fifth is that they need to share similar views. They need to resolve any kind of different views among themselves. And the last one is that they need to share the similar opinions taken in harmonious way, not to fight. So that's why Venerable Sariputra mentioned about that again. And later on, they asked the Buddha provide the further teachings to prevent any kind of dispute, any kind of fighting, any kind of disagreement among themselves. So the Buddha gave what we call 7 practices of harmonies, reconciliation, to settle out any kind of dispute within the monastic communities. So the first one is the practice of face-to-face sitting, and the second one is practice of remembrance. The first is the practice of non-stubbornness. The fourth is the practice of voluntary confession. And the fifth is the practice of accepting the verdict. And the sixth is the practice of decision by consensus. And the last one, the 7th practice, is the covering the mud with straw. So since time is up, let me stop here today, and we will discuss further about these 7 types of practices that can bring the harmonies and that can result in a dispute and conflict within the Buddhist monastic communities. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. See you then.